Yeah, no, I always do. And I thought I had earlier, but nope, I had
Nope.
not. So I think now we are.
Awesome.
All right.
Perfect.
All right. Good job, girl. Good job. Thank you.
There's that intuition psychic stuff coming right in.
There you go. You did your first demonstration right there. How was that? Mind blown yet? So we've got so much to cover tonight, and I want to make sure there's plenty of time for us all to have an interactive dialogue in a little bit. So if you think of any questions along the way, feel free to type them into the chat bar. And even if you don't want to type your whole question, if you just want to say, I have a question, then later when we open it up and unmute everybody, we'll have a queue that we can, go down and make sure that we address everything that you all want to talk about, because we do have you muted in the meantime just because of working dogs and flushing toilets and whatnot that tend to pop up otherwise with a group of this size. So I want to start things off just quickly by telling you a little bit about clarity presence, something that we're going to do a meditation on later, because it's something that I just know is so important for people at this time. This is something that I used to teach years ago, and it's people always say to me, "You're always so happy. You're always smiling. Like, what's wrong with you?" And they think I must live some totally charmed life, and I do. I do live a totally charmed life, but bad shit happens to me, right? I mean, even this year, my family was hit with some really significant, unexpected challenges. And I'm not going to say that there weren't sleepless nights or some anxiety filled moments, but overall, for the most part, I'm able to stay positive and pretty peaceful with it all. And I realized during these COVID days that it's because of something that I learned many, many years ago that had become such a part of me that I almost just was taking it for granted until I remembered that this was something that I learned specifically and used to teach. And I just really want to give that to you today. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it now before we talk to Sunny, and then later when we do the meditation, you'll have the preliminary pieces that you need to know. It's based in Eckhart Tolle's work, and I'm sure many of you here are familiar with Tolle's vast body of brilliant work. And I actually shored it up with a lot of things that I had learned from other transformation gurus that I'd studied with over the years and written for over the years. But the primary pieces that we'll be discussing tonight are all relevant to Tolle. So there are just a few pieces that I have to tease out and either remind you of if you're familiar already, or tell you about so that we can do the meditation later. And the first one is about recognizing that you have two distinct parts of you. Eckhart sometimes called it the horizontal plane and the vertical. We're going to call it the egoic mind and the big self. He calls it that also sometimes. But the egoic mind is the part of you that's responsible for creating your persona. It's that self that you're known to others by, your body, your name, your job, your groups and affiliations. But we all know that there's another part of us that's more real than that, right? We all know that we also have a big self. If you're comfortable with spiritual terminology, you might want to call it your soul, your spirit. I'm kind of guessing everyone here on the call today is comfortable with spiritual terminology. So whatever might be troubling you, weighing you down with all this craziness that we have going on, it's coming from your egoic mind. So you want to, first recognize that all your feelings are fine. We're here to have challenges and we're here to have negative feelings about that. But every feeling is the result of a thought, and it's resisting and buying into your thoughts that causes suffering. So every troubling thought that you've ever had has come from your egoic mind, not this other part of you that we identified, your big self. There are no problems over here in the big self. But it's not that your thoughts are your enemies. They're just not super reliable. They're much more flimsy and insubstantial than we feel like they are when we're fully identified over here in the big self. And your egoic mind isn't bad or something that you want to get rid of. You couldn't if you wanted to. We're here in this human experience, and the egoic mind comes standard with the package. And when things are going great, there's not a lot of incentive to step out of the egoic mind, right? Like, I love letting my egoic mind just run rampant when it's appropriate and joyful to do that, because I believe we're here for joy, for human joy. I mean, Eckhart's my favorite teacher of all time for his brilliance, but I don't know if I'd really want to hang out with the guy all day. You know, he's like so super transcended that it might be kind of boring. I mean, can you imagine if everybody were as completely transcended as Eckhart? What would movies even be about? So I love to revel in the egoic mind, in the human parts of life, the pleasures of the flesh and the decadence. And at the same time, I profoundly appreciate that I've built up the muscle to be able to step out of the egoic mind and move over into the big self when it serves me to do so. So that's what clarity presence is, and that's what I want to give you. Because when things out there are triggering us and making us feel bad, it's a really handy skill to be able to step over here and observe what's going on in the egoic mind. Because when you observe it, you're not in it. And it just takes all the weight and all the pressure out of all these thoughts that are spinning over here. And I need to point out that we're never truly disengaged from the egoic mind, even then. Eckhart tells a joke in his teacher training. It's not really a ha-ha joke. It's he says that there's a priest and a rabbi praying together in Jerusalem, and the priest is overcome with the glory of God, and he falls to his knees and says, "There is only God. I am nobody." And then a few minutes later, the rabbi is overcome with the presence of God and falls to his knees and says, "There is only God. I am nobody." And then this street sweeper behind them is also overcome and falls to his knees and says, "There is only God, I am nobody." And the priest says to the rabbi, "Look who thinks he's nobody." Yeah, it's not really like a funny joke. Eckhart thinks it's hysterical, but it's to point out that the egoic mind is always that cunning, that even when we notice, okay, we've stepped out of it, we're over here, that we're so proud of ourselves for that, that we're still kind of in it, still in the egoic mind. I was laughing at myself recently because I was posting on Facebook about how COVID times are such a perfect time to learn clarity presence, because the egoic mind, just by nature of quarantine and isolation, is a little bit a little bit eroded. It needs an audience to stay alive. So while our attention is a little taken away from shoring up the persona, then it's a great time to go into clarity presence. So as I'm posting this, I'm realizing that, oh, here I am on Facebook, where I go every day so that my persona can shore up my existence, even though I'm in quarantine. And, it's all about, look at Lisa, look how clever and spiritual Lisa is, look what Lisa's teaching. So persona. It's always there. We don't ever really step out of it. The best we can do is get conscious of it and laugh at ourselves and see it for what it's worth. So the second premise that I just need to remind you of, if you know Eckhart's work, or tell you about if you don't, is that the past and the future don't exist. It's an idea that we're all familiar with the power of now and mindfulness. Actually, Eckhart doesn't like the word mindfulness. But we can all probably understand the assertion that the future is non-existent, right? I mean, even as much as we plan and manipulate and think that we're going to control the future, a little thing like a global pandemic is enough to show us that the future, until it becomes the present, is just non-existent. Sometimes it can be harder to go along with the premise that the past is non-existent because we think we have evidence of the past. So here's my favorite way to make the point that the past doesn't exist. The past lives in your memories. And memories are thought forms. But here's what makes them so flimsy. They're not objective thought forms. They're thought forms from a very particular limited lens of your personal perception. So you want to pretend that a person or an event that you have a thought about is a statue right here. And say you're looking at it from right over here. Your whole truth about this thing is based on what you see right there. And if you were able to walk over here, you'd see it differently. And over here, you'd see it differently. And if you could walk completely over here, you'd see a complete different side that might have nothing in common with what you're looking at. But what we record in our memory and what we store away in our egoic mind is just this little sliver of perception that we're going to call the truth. And the egoic mind loves to think that it has the truth because it uses that to define us. The egoic mind always wants to be right about things. So all your memories, all your past, it's all really just illusory. The only power that the past has is the power that you give it with your attention and your belief in it. So you can just as easily choose to let it go. The only reason that the persona is trying so hard to hang on to it is because it's using that truth fragment to identify you. And you don't have to let it do that. All of these truth fragments that your egoic mind is clinging to, they're all just delicate little slivers of what may be true or may have been true. So the past is just memories, thought forms, and it only continues to exist to the extent that you continue to feed it with your attention. Now, it's had your attention long enough that if you stopped feeding it with your attention right now, it would still survive for a while on that energy. Eckhart uses the analogy of a wheel. If you use your energy to spin a wheel and then you withdraw it, it's still going to spin for a while. But if you don't go back and give it more energy, another spin, it'll eventually stop. And that's the way that the past will cease to exist if we stop giving it attention and energy. So the only real moment is this present moment. Your whole life takes place in this present moment and the next one and the next one. And in this moment, actual problems hardly ever reside. But your egoic mind, where all your troubling thoughts live, loves to pull you into the past or the future. We all have challenges that come up. And right now, we're all involved in a collective challenge that just amplifies whatever underlying anxiety and fear we've already been carrying around. And one reason that this is so applicable now is that a lot of our persona is exercised in our daily interactions outside of our homes. How others perceive us is how our persona stays engaged and strong. So during this time of forced isolation, what we're subconsciously seeing is the dissolution of the persona. And that scares the crap out of the egoic mind. But it also creates a space where we can pull out of it a little bit and learn to identify over here with our big self. Another thing that's super amped up right now is that we feel like we need to protect ourselves. When we feel threatened by the outside world, as we're being programmed to feel right and left these days, the persona is threatened. And that makes it go into protection mode. And we feel that as kind of a vague, unspecified, sort of just an underlying stress. And the last thing that's like super heightened these days is that the persona needs a position on everything. The persona wants to be right. And there's so much information that we're bombarded with this pandemic. And the egoic mind wants to pick a side. Open the country, don't open the country. The government's doing a great job. The government's doing a crappy job. Everybody that we encounter has these strong opinions, and the egoic mind wants to solidify your persona with some strong opinions, but the truth just feels like a crazy moving target right now. So I just wanted to get those little bits of information are just necessary for the clarity presence technique that I'm going to take you through at the top of the hour. We're going to go through that, and it'll show you how to do this technique for yourself, because that's what I just realized I really wanted to give you more than anything today, is this technique to deal with all these things that are going on for us right now. So Sunny, I know that you are well versed in all of this, and I know you also have lots of things to share in other areas of self-care and graceful management of stressful times. You had some really beautiful thoughts recently about stuffing emotions. I'd love for you to talk about that. So I want to, I'm going to tell you the story first about Sunny, and then we're going to let her talk to you for a little while. but I had this reading with Sunny. I'm going to say it was 10 years ago or more. It might have been a few years more than that. And I had three things that I wanted to know about. My mom was very ill. I wanted to know about what was going to happen with her and her health. I wanted to know about my highest career calling, and I wanted to know about my romantic future. So Sunny told me some things that panned out exactly with my mom and her passing that were very, very helpful and beautiful and went exactly the way Sunny had described it that same year. So yeah, if it was the same year, then it was 8 years ago. And then she said that I was meant to be teaching groups and individuals consciousness raising tools, which panned out to the letter for a while. I took a few years off, but I'm back on target with that one. But the really fun part of the story was the romantic part, because she tuned in and she could see David. And I believe now that she could actually see him with her visual senses, because she was describing him. She described his height, his blue eyes, his strong chin. She said that, some other things about him, like he'd have a boat and some other sort of just identifying things that all panned out to be true. And then she said, if he looks, she was trying to like find somebody to tell me that he looked like a comparative celebrity. And she said, kind of like Anderson Cooper, but not with white hair. David doesn't see it, but I totally see it. And then she's like, oh, and I'm feeling a lot of pain in my knee. So I think maybe he has a bad knee, or he had knee surgery, something like that. And so I confessed that I had forgotten all this when I actually met David, when we were on this first date. I wasn't thinking about Sunny's reading. It was years later. But later, looking back, what struck me most was that on this first date, David matched all the things that she said, except there was no problem with his knee. But we went to a cafe where I knew the owners, because I used to give workshops at this cafe a lot. And Orly, my friend, comes hobbling out from the back kitchen and said that she had fallen in the kitchen and had badly twisted her knee, and she would have gone to the hospital if not that, she knew that I was coming in and she wanted to see me. So of course we're trying to get her to go to the hospital. She rested, her knee was fine. But months later, when I found this reading and was going through all the checkpoints, it just completely blew my mind that when she was tuning into my future romantic life, she had that pain in her knee that was so clearly Orly's knee. So intuition is something that I love. I haven't even begun to develop my gifts of it to anywhere near the extent that Sunny has, but I know she's going to talk to you tonight somewhat about developing your intuition as well. So come on, girl, bring it. We want to hear what you got.
All right. All right. Hey, everyone. How are ya? I can hear you out here. I can't hear you here, but I can hear you out here. So I'm so excited to be here, and I was so happy to, when Lisa initially brought this up back in, gosh, I don't know, October or so, we were going to be in person, and I was coming to the Keys. So I was supposed to be in the Keys right now. And then when she approached me and said, well, hey, you're not going to be here physically, but let's do this online and just offer it to people as a way of service. That felt really good to me, because that's what I like to do anyway. So thank you, Lisa, for inviting me. And thank you for the beautiful vision that you've had with this Love Shack. I'm sure that most people that are watching, and whether you watch the replay, you guys have been a part of it in a variety of different ways, whether it's in person or online. And what a beautiful vision and gift. And so happy to see that you are stepping back into that practice, which just lights you up so much, and the ripple effect of that will light everyone else up as well. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you, my friend.
All right. So, I think I'm going to start just to give you a little, just a one little piece of background about me, so you kind of have some understanding of kind of where I've come from. because we're talking about today. Well, I don't know what we're going to talk about. I kind of go all over the place, but self-love certainly is where I'm going to start. Okay. And so just a little bit of background about me. I was, at the age of 13, I woke up in the middle of the night one night and rolled over and saw my guardian angel above my bed. And I didn't believe in angels. It wasn't an experience. The only thing I knew about angels is they were figurines that sat on the mantle. Like they weren't something that I felt like you could see or talk to or anything like that at that age. But the experience that I had with that in that moment was an experience that literally not only changed my life, but it inspired curiosity in me. And that night when I had that experience, I felt this just overwhelming feeling of love, like I had never felt in this human experience before. And, I'm only 13, so it's not like I had a lot of experience, but I hadn't felt that before, even from my parents. And so when I rolled back over, I was so calm, I just rolled back over and I went back to sleep. The next morning, the egoic mind, my head kicked in and said, oh my God, what was that? And I ran downstairs. I ran down. I told my mom, I said, there was somebody floating above my bed. She had wings and she had a face kind of like you. And I don't know, she was really cool and it felt really good, but now I don't know what. And my mom said, well, Sunny, that was your guardian angel. And I said, I don't think I have one of those. And she said, well, of course you do. Everybody has a guardian angel. And I said, I don't think I do. Because if I had a guardian angel, then all these bad things that have happened to me wouldn't happen. And I was only 13, so it's not like there was a lot of bad things, but like people weren't talking to me and I didn't have friends and I wasn't cool and popular. Like that was the bad stuff, right? And she said, Sunny, at 11 o'clock last night, I came into your room and I actually prayed over you and I asked God and the angels to keep you safe. And I had awakened at 1 o'clock in the morning because I had looked at the clock. And so what I realized in that moment is I had awakened to the manifestation of my mother's prayer. And because of that, it got me curious. Okay, if there are angels that I've been totally unaware of, if that's something that I could see and feel, even more importantly than see, I could feel, then what else is out there? What else could I connect with? What else might I be missing that feels the way this feels? So that sent me on a journey that for the last 36 years, I've been studying spirituality, metaphysics, mediumship, and over the last 20 years have been teaching it. So to just kind of catch you up on that background. Now, part of the struggle that I had is when that experience happened, I lived in Salt Lake City, Utah. I was raised in Salt Lake City, Utah. And so I started very quickly after that. I started seeing angels. I started seeing deceased people. I started seeing spirit guides around people. I started seeing energies. And I started telling people. And at 13 in Salt Lake City, Utah, just going to say, not a good idea. Not a good idea. So what happened over those next 15 years was the struggle of self-love and self-worth, because I wanted so much to be normal like everybody else, but I wasn't. And I had this push and pull. I'd have these really cool experiences and think, oh my God, this is so cool. And then I'd have this feeling of loneliness and isolation and not being like everybody else. And so what that did is it taught me at a very young age that I couldn't be who I am. And I don't think it was meant to teach me that, but that's the way I took it. And so over those next many, many years, and this has been a lifelong challenge for me, it still is sometimes, is learning how to love myself unconditionally, without condition. So first off, anybody else ever struggle with that? Self-love, self-worth, self-esteem, valuing yourself? And I would even say valuing yourself over and above, I know this is extreme, over and above everyone else. Okay, that's uncomfortable, right? So I want to start by just sharing that I do believe that we do have to value ourselves over and above everyone else, because otherwise we don't have the energy to give to those that we love and that we care about. And I think that's a great struggle because it's not what we're trained to do. I don't know about many of you, but I was trained, take care of everybody else first. If you get time at the end of the day, maybe you'll have a half hour and you can take a bath, and that's your gift. You know, not a requirement, not just taking care of, like, that's a gift. Or, you know, make sure that everybody else's needs are met. And if they are, then maybe you could do something for yourself. And so that was the teaching and the modeling through society, through my family, through the environment that I was in. I think that's how many of us have been affected. So what happened for me is I didn't know what my value was. And I based my value on external experiences. I based my value on how other people perceived me and what they might have said about me. So if I looked good, then I would have value. And if I did something good, if I was nice, if I took care of something, if I made the money I needed to do, if I went to school, if I got the good grades, and the story just went on and on and on. Well, here's the thing that happened. I quit school when I was 15. I was overweight. I didn't fit in. I didn't have friends. So therefore, the value was nil. So because that value was so low, I started to attract to me people that had very low value in themselves. Any of you ever been there, done that? Right? So addicts, alcoholics, that's the kind of vibe that I attracted. So when I started to realize that I really didn't know who I was, and I was only 18, 19 years old, but I was a mother at that age. And so I realized, oh my God, I'm raising this child. I don't even know who the hell I am. And I don't feel like I'm good enough to do anything. And that set me on a lifelong journey of self-love. So here's the first question. And you guys can use the chat if you want to answer, if you want to comment. Or you can raise your hand, because I like to be interactive. So I just do not like to sit and listen to myself talk. I like to talk with all of you. So I'm going to ask some questions and you guys can answer them, okay? So here's the first thing. What is the definition of self-esteem to you? How do you define self-esteem? Anybody want to give it a shot? You can just raise your physical hand, or if you're on a audio on a phone, you can use the raise your hand button. Self-esteem, how would you define it? Oh, come on. Okay, Deborah. You have to unmute yourself, honey. There you go.
Wait. Okay, I'm on. I think the definition of self-esteem is feeling comfortable and authentic in your own skin.
Okay, beautiful. That's great. Okay, self-esteem. Anybody else have one they want to share? Definition of self-esteem? Everybody kind of goes, oh, okay, that sounds good. All right, how about now the definition of self-worth?
Rob has one. Rob says confidence in one's own worth or abilities.
Oh, okay, beautiful. Confidence in one's own worth or abilities. Okay, so that's self-esteem. That's the dictionary. Okay. All right, now what about self-worth? So does self-worth feel different or does it feel the same? And if it feels different, how would you define self-worth? Self-worth feels deeper. Okay, Rob says that self-worth feels deeper. Anybody have a different answer or response?
I feel like esteem is more in other people's eyes, how others see you, esteem you, whereas worth is something that could come from you internally.
Okay, beautiful. Lots of heads nodding. Okay. And then Marty Glenn, similar, valuing self, that I'm lovable and capable. Okay. So this is what I've learned over a lifetime of this. And where I learned all this was the angels. The angels are what taught me. Hang on. I think we're having a little journey right now. Are any of you on a journey with this right now?
We're on a journey. Let's see.
Okay.
We're viewing Daylight's screen. Who's Daylight?
So Daylight must have hit share their screen.
Whoever Daylight is, I think that the screen is.
Yes. Tell me what to do. Sorry.
It's okay. So at the very top, honey, you're going to see a red button that says stop screen share.
I can do that.
There you go. You got it, sister.
Who knew I had that kind of power?
Look at you, just taking over. Okay, beautiful. All right. So self-esteem is your perception of your value. Okay, self-esteem, your perception of your value. So at any given time, depending on how you feel, oh, I ate that bag of cookies, my self-esteem is low. Oh, I just worked out, my self-esteem is high. And a lot of times it changes like that, right? So self-esteem is your perception of your value. Self-worth is your innate value. Your innate value. You are worthy simply because you are a spirit in a body. The end. Done. Didn't need to do anything else. So you didn't need to graduate. You didn't have to go to college for 4 years. You didn't have to have that 2.2 kids. You didn't have to make the $1 million. You're worthy simply because you are. But because our self-esteem is what we recognize, what the egoic mind connects to, versus our self-worth, which is the I am, the higher presence, we sit in a space of really aligning more with the self-esteem. So what happens is when we are not loving ourselves, when we are not being kind and loving and treating ourselves with positivity and knowing our value, we start to lose our self-esteem. And oftentimes we get to a point like I was, where my self-esteem was so low that I didn't recognize that I really had any value. And so when you get to that place that's so dark, it's very hard to see the light, right? But what we always have is we are always a spirit in a body, always. That doesn't ever change. That starts at the beginning and it doesn't go till you go. So that spirit in a body, and there aren't any spirits that come that are like half spirits, like, oh, we're just going to give that body a little bit of spirit and then the other bodies are going to get a lot of spirit. Like, it doesn't work that way, right? So everybody, I don't care where they are. I don't care if they're in prison. I don't care if they're sleeping on the street. I don't care if they're in the mansion on the hill. Everybody has value simply because they are a spirit in a body. Can you guys agree with me on that? So what I've learned is that value that I have within me and the self-esteem, my perception of my value, when I was born, when you were born, those were actually in alignment. Our self-esteem and our self-worth were lined up. We knew our value when we were born. We knew that we were worthy. And you came into this world, with no money, no clothes, no food, nothing. And you said, I am so freaking valuable that somebody is going to drop everything and take care of me. That's how valuable and worthy you knew that you were at one time. And what happened is, then, based on the people around us, the communities, the society around us, we started to see that when I don't clean my room, I get in trouble, therefore I'm bad. And that started to separate us. So that alignment of us knowing that we are spirit in a body and we are worthy, we started to get a little bit of separation. And then when we started to get in trouble for certain things, and when we started to get feedback from others, and we started to witness that, oh, I'm not okay when I do this, we didn't realize that the action wasn't okay. We thought that we weren't okay. So we internalize that, and it creates the distance. And we get further and further away from who we really, truly are, in that sense of knowing the value that we carry. So then the simple journey is find your way back. Find your way back. So what worked for me and what happened for me is I had to learn how to begin to love myself and how to find the value that had to be in there somewhere. If I was equal to any of these other people, the value had to be there. And for me, a lot of this was actually about acting as if, believe it or not, because I didn't know how to do it. So I looked and I said, okay, well, I think, because I was only 19 years old when I started this, because I had a child and I thought, oh my God, I do not want this child to be raised by a mother who does not know her value. I need to figure out how to fix this and heal this for myself so I don't transfer it and teach him how to be this way. And unfortunately, I did not learn that soon enough, quite honestly. It had a great effect on my son, one that he now is 30 years old and is having to work through himself. However, there's perfection in all the journey. And I believe that part of his birth as a teenage mom was that he would teach me how to love myself, because then I could teach others how to love themselves. So what I had to figure out for me was I needed to just act as if somebody that would love themselves would act. That's how I started. So probably somebody that loved themselves would probably say nice things to themselves instead of shitty things all the time. Probably somebody that loved themselves would be would care if they brushed their hair or brushed their teeth one day or not. Probably somebody that loved themselves would probably shower every day or take care of themselves instead of laying in their shack, because I literally, this is called the Love Shack, but I literally lived in a shack. We literally had no running water. We had no heat or electricity. We had mice that would run over us in the middle of the night because I didn't have a bed. That was how low of self-esteem I got, because I didn't feel like I had value. And so I allowed myself to live with my baby in an environment like that for almost 3 years, because I didn't have the value. That's the contrast of my life. And so I started to act like, okay, somebody that loved themselves would get up and change their clothes. Somebody that loved themselves would shower. Somebody that loved themselves would tell themselves nice things. Somebody that loved themselves would go and buy nutritious food. Somebody that loved themselves, and it just built and built and built to a point where little teeny things of self-care. Somebody that loved themselves would probably move their body a little bit. Somebody that loved themselves probably would not accept the kind of behavior that this relationship is treating me. And eventually, took a long time, 3 years to start to move out of a place where I felt like I had enough value to get to a new environment, a new location. But what I realized that held me back is I was afraid. I was afraid. And I wonder how many of you, now my experience was different because I was afraid of who I was. I was afraid of living on my own. I was so afraid, and I didn't even recognize that at the time. But, you know, fear is something a lot of people are experiencing right now. How many of you in the last 9 weeks through this pandemic have had fear pop in and out of your life in a variety of different ways? And, you know, what I realize is when the pandemic first started, because at the end of last year, I actually knew something serious that was going to break the foundations of things that weren't working. I knew that was going to happen. I talked about it in all my classes. I didn't know it was going to look like this. I'm glad I didn't, because I don't know what I would have done. But I knew that the healthcare system and the education system, like, we need some change, right? We need some change internally as well as externally. But I didn't know how it was going to look. And so what I saw at the beginning was I saw a lot of fear. Now that people are starting to kind of move out into the world a little bit, I'm seeing a lot of confusion. What do? Do we go in? Do we go out? Do we go to the movie? Do we not go to the movie? Do we wear a mask? Do we not wear a mask? Just watch any channel, read anything, and you're going to get one answer, and then watch something else, you're going to get another. So there's a lot of confusion, where confusion stems from fear. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about, and I love that Lisa is going to do this exercise for us in a few minutes, because I think that I think that this will go well together, because if we have fear and we don't acknowledge it, we don't actually feel it, we go, ooh, that doesn't feel good, and we push it down. Anybody ever do that? Stuff it, put it in its compartment, put it in a cute little box with a pretty bow, you know, all those kind of things, right? And I think what we need to do is we just need to acknowledge that the fear is there. So for me, this is what that looks like. This is actually how I do it in my own personal life. When I feel a fear, I immediately, as soon as I'm aware of it, I acknowledge it. I say, oh, there you are. And then I feel it. I take a deep breath and I feel into that fear. And oftentimes I pay attention to where am I feeling it in my body, right? So my heart, my gut is usually where I feel it, one of those two places. And as I feel that, I acknowledge, okay, you're feeling some fear. And I actually, instead of then pushing it down, I actually acknowledge the fear, and I say, either out loud or in my mind, depending on who's around, I say, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for letting me know that this is living inside of me. Thank you for helping me to see an area that I need to shine some light on. Thank you for helping me have the awareness that I might want to make a different choice than to live in fear. So I acknowledge it. I say thank you. And then I say something to the effect of, thank you for sharing. I'm not choosing to put my attention there. I choose, and I redirect it. I choose to focus on love. I choose to feel safe and secure. I choose to, and I flip that energy. And what happens for me then is it's not like when you have a fear. I bet all of you have done this. When you've had a fear and you push it down, you push it down. I did it through food with stuffing it down. But I think a lot of us push those fears down. It's like a beach ball that you're keeping under the water. And have any of you tried to keep a beach ball under the water? Have any of you done it successfully? Like what happens is as soon as somebody calls your name, boop, distracted, and that shit flies sideways, right? Like it just comes up, it pops out, and it never is planned. So you're like, oh man, that I didn't mean to say that. It didn't come out because the energy has to go somewhere. And you're using all of your energy to try to control it and keep it in this one space. And instead, all it wants is to be acknowledged. Just acknowledge that I'm here. You don't need to give it any more power, because see, if I'm pushing that beach ball underwater, now think about this. Some of you might have pushed a beach ball underwater for a week, maybe a month, maybe decades. Then as you are putting the energy to push those feelings down, you are empowering it every second that you are because you're using your power to push the beach ball down. Now, if I just say, oh, hey, there you are. Thanks. Okay, yeah, I got that. Yeah, thanks for helping me out with that. I appreciate it. And I'm choosing this. Boom. It releases. As simple as that. Now, why is that important? Well, of course, it's important because we don't want to live in fear. The reality of it is your body, your physical body, has the same physical experience of fear. Now, well, tell me this. What does your physical body do when you're in fear? So Lisa, when you have fear, what happens in your physical body? What sensations do you become aware of?
A tightness in my belly, my solar plexus area, maybe my shoulders.
Yeah. So you get tight.
Yeah.
Do you ever get sweaty or sweaty palms, or do you ever get shaky?
Yeah, and I'm kind of foggy headed, I think.
Yeah. And sometimes people get a pit in their stomach, right? Okay, now, how do you feel? Oh, go ahead. What?
Marty was chiming in that she said, I contract, I get smaller.
Yeah, yes. Okay, now, how do you feel in general, physically, when you're excited about something?
Expansive.
Okay, so it feels expansive. What happens in your body? Do you ever get butterflies?
Yeah.
Okay, does your heart race a little bit?
Maybe.
Do your palms ever get sweaty?
Could be. See where you're going, yep.
You all see where I'm going? So the idea is that the feelings that we have with the physical feel, just the physical feelings that we have with fear, are almost exactly the same as the physical feelings that we have with excitement, except that we call it something different. Pit in my stomach versus butterflies. But if you really actually thought about it, it's usually that same feeling. But we have been taught to identify with fear because we are a fear-based society. We are trained as children through fearful techniques, not generally through excited, loving techniques. So we associate the feelings and we go, ooh, I'm scared. I could be scared to travel across the country, or I could be excited. I could be scared to get married to this new person, or I could be excited. But your body is having the same feelings. Now, so why is this important? This is important for many reasons, but one of the biggest reasons to me is when you are in fear, you are not clear. You are not clear. You're cloudy. Your focus, your attention is on something that you're losing your power to. So we want to be able to move through the fear so that we can have some clarity, so that you can learn to listen to your intuition. I believe that right now, as a society, right now, as we are beginning to come out of quarantine, that people are afraid to do the wrong thing. People are afraid to make the wrong decision. People are afraid to go out into the world. People are afraid to not go out into the world. People are having fear and confusion about what is right or what is wrong. They're also afraid of what people are going to think if they do this thing or that thing. And you can, and like I said, you could read anything on any news station, any newspaper, on Facebook, wherever you read to get your information. Sorry, not shit, but it kind of is shit a lot of times. Sorry. But wherever you're reading to get your stuff, and you can find 5 different answers to the same question. So ultimately, we're going to have to come back to ourselves and our intuition. You will have clarity with your intuition when you aren't having fear be the guide. Love is what guides intuition. And when you are in a loving, present, now state, then you could, when you say, hey, you know what, I haven't seen my mother for 10 weeks, and I know that, you know, I need to keep my distance physically, but at the same time, my heart and my soul and my emotions and my mind are saying, you know what, I'm getting depressed and I need to have that experience. Then you would put a hand on your heart and say, what is right for me for now? And you could trust your intuition because it would guide you, and it would say, nope, you need to wait. Or it would say, you know what, you need to go. Because here's the thing, guys, one of the major things that's happened during this pandemic, and I totally understand why, but I think it's important to start finding some balance and some harmony, is we have been focused on physical only. Physical distance, physical health, physical everything. Well, we are 4 aspects of a body. We are a mind, we are a body, we are spirit, and we are emotions. And if we're only focused on one thing, these other 3 things have a lot of power. So if we're getting depressed, I think mental health issues are hugely increased, suicide, all of those things. If we are depressed, if we're feeling disconnected, if we're feeling separated, the ripple effect of that can have as much, if not more harm than the physical. So we've got to find harmony in this for each individual. And I'm not saying there's a right way or a wrong way. I'm saying each one of you have your own way. And that's why we've got to learn to really come into paying attention to our intuition and honoring what it says over and above anything else. So self-love helps open us up to create the awareness of the fear that's living there so we can transmute it, so that we can ultimately get to a place where we can listen to that intuitive guidance. Because everybody, whether you believe it or not, whether you think you're intuitive or not, you were born with it. If you're a spirit in a body, you have the 6th sense. You have intuition, and it's ingrained in you. But if you are clouded by all of these activities and everything happening and all the different questions and trying to figure everything out and the fears and everything, you can't hear it. And so part of my goal and part of what I'm wanting to share, at least with you today, is clearing the space, being self-loving, doing things that you need for self-care. And one of those things is recognizing when you have fear and just acknowledging it, not shaming yourself, blaming yourself, guilting yourself, just going, oh, yeah, there you are. And then allowing yourself to tune in and tap in to that intuitive being that you are for your highest, greatest good. That's my goal. So I think that Lisa's exercise in bringing us present into this now moment is like perfect. And we didn't even know that piece.
I had a feeling. I feel beautifully. I love what you're sharing, girl, and totally the choosing is what it's all about. It's the recognition and the not taking those thoughts, that fear, all that seriously, because it's all just the stuff over here in the egoic mind, and it's just thought forms, and it's just illusory. So being able to align over here with the big self is what you're calling intuition, and what I call aligning with our soul or our big self presence. So yeah, so we'll do a clarity presence process. It's not really a meditation. It's sort of like a meditation, but it's not really a meditation. But it will allow you to bring it to something that's bothering you. And there are a lot of different techniques that I use to get clients aligned with the big self, but I chose this one because it's one of the easiest to do with a group, and because it's something that you can learn and then do yourself later when we're not together with all these challenges that we're facing now. So before we start, I want you to just take a moment and bring to mind any issue, any challenge, whatever's troubling you most right now. Could be big, could be some tiny little thing that came up this morning. Whatever first pops into your head is perfect. Okay, there we are. So once you have it, sorry, I accidentally muted myself. Once you have it, I want you to give it a rating from 1 to 10 in terms of how much it's distressing you. 1 being the least, 10 being the greatest. My EFT trainer, Betsy Muller, calls it a SUDS score, for subjective unit of distress. EFT is another awesome energetic tool you can use. And if you have something to write stuff down, it's not imperative, but you could just write down a word or two to represent this issue along with the SUDS score that you gave it. And we'll come back to it later. Okay, now you're going to get comfy in your seat. You can even lie down if you're more comfortable. And you're going to close your eyes for a little while until I tell you to open them. That'll help you to go inward. As I said, it's not exactly a meditation, but it's a process where going inward helps to create the situation for you. Take just a moment to let your thoughts settle a little bit. Let your attention follow the flow of your breath. And then I want you to hold up your right hand. And without touching anything or moving your hand or opening your eyes, is there any way that you can know that your hand is there? I'm inviting you to experience the inner feeling of the right hand. And it's okay if you don't feel it at first, just direct all your attention there and see if you can find that subtle sense of aliveness where your right hand is. Once you're feeling it, you've entered the energetic field of the body Sunny was just talking about. You've entered it with your attention. You can lower your hand whenever you'd like, sit comfortably. And then now that you've got a sense of what it feels like, see if you can feel that inner buzzing in the other hand and maybe in other parts of your body. Maybe you notice it in your feet, your thighs, It's almost like a super mild, subtle version of what happens when we say a body part falls asleep. This sensation that you're feeling, this is your animating force, the thing that makes you alive. This is your soul energy. So as I talk, I want you to continue giving most of your attention to the inner buzzing that you're feeling, even as you let a small degree of your attention focus on my words. The biggest problem most people have with meditation is they feel like they can't quiet their runaway thoughts enough. So I found that giving your mind two simultaneous things to do really kind of helps with that. So like we discussed earlier, you have an egoic mind and you have your big self. The egoic mind is that part of you that's responsible for creating your persona, the external version of you that you present to the world as your identity. We all have one. It doesn't make you fake. And we all have that other piece of us. That's our soul or our spirit. If you don't like spiritual terms, you can just think of it as the wisest, most grounded part of you. But I think we're all on the same page here. And we're calling that the big self. So the egoic mind's job is to constantly define and shore up that persona, that external you. And most of us mere mortals identify much more strongly on a moment-to-moment basis with our persona than we do with our big self. But when you focus all your attention on your energetic presence like you're doing now, it pulls you out of the egoic mind a little bit and it moves you into greater identification with your big self. When you're identifying over here at the big self, you can observe the egoic mind. It's still a form of thinking, but it's thinking from a higher dimension of consciousness. So the buzzing that you feel, your big self, is completely unconcerned about your persona. And giving this buzzing your full attention allows you to recognize the egoic mind where your persona exists as a separate entity. It may be a part of you, but in this moment, at least, it's not you because you're the observer of it. So as you listen to me talk, make sure you're still focusing on this feeling of the buzzing within you. Even crank it up as much as you can purposefully do. Just crank up that sensation. And then from this place, bring up that negative feeling you identified. Whether it's rooted in some kind of worry, anxiety, shame, fear, you always start by noticing the feeling. And then the next thing to recognize is that every feeling you have originates from thought. And those thoughts, particularly the negative ones, are generated by the egoic mind we've been talking about. It's always trying to pull you into identification with it. It's easy to go through days, weeks, years, whole lifetimes sometimes fully identified with the egoic mind, forgetting that it's only a part of who you are. So this meditation is about remembering that and learning how to disidentify with the egoic mind when it serves you to do so. So you're now observing the thought. It's not you. And understanding that this thought comes from the egoic mind, not from the big self, look at how it might be serving the ego. Remember that the egoic mind is always looking to fortify that persona, the ego presence. And now without any judgment, ask what the egoic mind's motive might be in generating this distressing thought. You might notice, oh, this is a victim thought. The egoic mind has found some subconscious benefit to me being a victim. Maybe it thinks I'll get more attention or help or love from someone. Maybe it thinks I won't have to take on as much responsibility. I'll get out of doing some stuff. Or maybe this is a thought about wanting to look good and not getting the respect or admiration the persona craves. It's easy to see how a thought like that is all about fortifying the persona. Remember, there's no judgment in these observations. This is simply the egoic mind doing what it does. We all have one. And now you, as the big self, you're just observing it. No judgment. One thing that the egoic mind loves to do is pull your attention into the past or the future. This is because it uses the past to define you and make you separate from others. And it projects your thoughts into the future as a way to ensure its continued existence. But here, from the perspective of your big self, you can deeply embrace the truth that the past and the future are both non-existent. They're illusory. So with this understanding, again, bring to mind that troubling thought that you had identified. Maybe your big self can look at this thought and realize, oh, this is a fear-based thought. This is anxiety about something that could happen to me. That's my egoic mind trying to protect me because it thinks keeping me vigilant and alert about this topic will keep me safe from it. Well, that's sweet. Of course, from my big self perspective, I know that's not how it works. From this higher perspective, I understand that the future is completely made up and imaginary right now. My only point of power is this present moment and the creative energy that I'm bringing to it by this vibration that I'm emitting. Or maybe when you observe the thought, you see that it's based in regret or shame or frustration with yourself, which means it's all about the past. And the big self knows that the past is as non-existent as the future. It's gone. Since everyone remembers it differently, it barely even has any objective merit whatsoever. The thought might be about some recent or long ago failure. Maybe it's triggering feelings of worthlessness or shame. Your big self can look at that and say, my egoic mind is focusing on this past event as though it were a major part of my identity. But over here, from my higher big self vantage point, I know the past is just as illusory as the future. Neither one exists. The only thing that exists is this moment right now. I can release anything from my past simply by deciding to no longer feed it with my attention. It's not going to all dissolve immediately because I've invested a lot of prior energy into it. So it'll run on that energy for a while. But if I stop feeding it energy, it will eventually run out, and then the past literally ceases to exist. It's all just memory, which is just thought form, which is flimsy as hell. So it's likely that the negative feeling you identified fell into maybe one of those categories that I just described. And examining your thoughts this way, from the vantage point of the big self, is what drains them of their power over you. The most important thing for your big self to recognize when you do this is that this uncomfortable feeling that you have identified, this sprang from a thought. And every thought is just a weak, unsubstantiated perception that represents a tiny sliver of a thing. Identification with the egoic mind gives it energy, but observation of the egoic mind from the big self withdraws energy from it. So I'm just going to recap because I want you to be able to repeat this process on your own. You first identify you feel bad about something. Then, since your feelings are always a result of your thoughts, you want to notice what the thoughts were that caused the feeling. It's easiest to do this when you utilize some tool for tapping into your energetic body. The one we're using right now is just one of many tools. Then once you've stepped into the observer role, you've automatically begun dissipating the negative energy simply by observing the thought. And then you look at the thought in terms of what is this thought's purpose from the perspective of my egoic mind? Because you know the egoic mind is where all negative thoughts come from, and they're always about fortifying your persona. And you want to be able to observe that from your big self, which is your resilience, your inner strength. So when you recognize you have this part of you, then it's possible to observe the thought instead of being entangled with it. And just having this mental dialogue is what loosens up the negative energy that you were experiencing and takes the weight out of it so you can move forward more effectively. All this time you've been observing the thought, you've been draining away its power, because when you observe it, you're not in it. So since we're limited on time, you can open your eyes now and maybe take an inventory of how you're feeling. Try to find that answer more in your heart than in your head. I'll give you a second to come back. And then again, see if you can give it a subjective units of distress score. Even though this was just a tiny sliver of a clarity presence session, hopefully the score went down some. It usually does. And hopefully this is a tool that you'll be able to use in the future. Even if you don't want to use it to address any particular negative feeling that you're having, the going into your body and feeling the energetic presence is a beautiful meditation in itself. You can do that when you're falling asleep at night. It's a great way to fall asleep. In the morning when you wake up, before you start your day, when you're just sort of gaining consciousness, if you spend a few moments going into that energetic field, just reminding yourself, this is my big self, my spirit self, it helps you to be able to break out of it, easier during other times of your day. So the whole crux of clarity presence is being able to observe your thoughts through disidentification with your egoic mind and purposeful identification with your big self. Simple concept, certainly not always easy to pull off. That's why in individual trainings, I have a bunch of other tools that I can personalize it with, because there are a lot of methods for identifying with the big self. So sometimes it takes some trial and error to figure out what works best for you. And if you do feel like you want personalized help with that, I want to make that as accessible as possible. So if you go to my website to book a personal session, use the code LOVESHACK to get 50% off for private sessions, because I really want to, as long as I can during COVID times, as long as my schedule permits, I want to be able to help you with that. So I want to open up the group now. My brilliant coach, Marty Glenn, who's on the call with us, uses a phrase that I believe she said originated in a Hawaiian custom, where you greet people with the words, all of you is welcome here. And that is for sure the feeling we always want you to have at the Love Shack. So even though it's a large group today, I want you to really feel that all of you is welcome here, with no censoring of any part of yourself. And we'll see what we have in the chat, who's in the queue, and we'll have a group conversation together. My screen got weird. David, can you see that?
I don't see anybody that has any questions. So yeah, if you guys have questions, you can put them in the chat, or I don't know if you want to open them up to have to talk. This is Lisa's gig. I'm just here for the ride. So I don't know exactly how it works, but.
We have a lot today, so I didn't know if we should just have everybody unmute, but if we don't have questions waiting in the queue, then let's go ahead and just raise. I can't see everybody at once on my screen. Can you see everybody, Sunny?
Most people, because all the ones at the end are, yeah, I can see everybody that's physical. If you guys are on your phone or something, then you just have to use the little raise your hand button to be able to raise your hand if you have a question or comment or anything like that.
Steve is helping us with the chat in there too. So ready, David? Yes? Okay. Rob is asking, what do you all think of healing? What do you mean, babe?
What part of healing?
Let's unmute Rob and have him talk to us. Rob is going to be the next Love Shack guest, who's going to do a beautiful session with me on June 3rd. I hope you all come back for that. Rob, show yourself, mister.
Oh my gosh. Hello. Hello. That was amazing, by the way. You guys are impeccable. And I mean impeccable. Sunny, Lisa, amazing. I wonder what you think about healing. I think you both spoke to that. I think that obviously self-love speaks to that, and clarity presence speaks to that. And I just wonder what you think about the ways in which healing can unfold or does unfold in people's lives as a result of self-love and as a result of the clarity presence process. I've always loved Eckhart, but I also loved Joel Goldsmith and Ernest Holmes and all those folks. And so I just wonder for each of you what you've discovered about healing through each of those processes. I'm going to go hide again, okay?
Go ahead, Lisa.
I'll just say that I have looked at from 1,000 angles, and I've done trainings with all these different gurus and personal development people, and I've written books for them. And for a while, I really subscribed to, we need to go back to the traumatic events. We need to bring it up so that we can face it and deal with it. But truly, I think what I've come around to feeling more comfortable with is that the past would not be existing if we didn't keep poking at it. It's really a matter of withdrawing our attention, and all this rehashing and going through therapy and going through, I've done the whole inner child work. I've done all those things, and I just feel more clear and comfortable about letting go of the past, letting go of anything that's not in this moment, because it really doesn't exist. Whatever I see as my traumatic events, I'm only seeing that little sliver of it. I'm not able to walk around it and see all the sides. And even though that's what a lot of the going back in time modalities do, I think whatever you believe is going to work for you is going to work for you. So anybody who feels they need healing, find something you believe in and throw yourself wholeheartedly into it. And that's the best route to healing. But for me, it's not really about going back there. It's about staying in the present moment and realizing all my power is right here.
And I would echo that. I absolutely, I think that a lot of times going back and digging around tears the scab off of things that don't need to be, like the power isn't there. Your power is in this present moment always. And I think for me, where a lot of my healing has come from is to be present in the moment and recognize what's being activated inside of me, what button is being pushed, especially, not even speaking to just emotional healing, but to physical healing. I literally was on my deathbed when I was 18 years old and literally had a miraculous healing. And I have had near-death experience, and I've healed a lot of physical issues in my body by not giving the dis-ease the attention, but giving the ease, the health, the attention, by visualizing. I osteoporosis, I was diagnosed with osteopenia at 27 years old. They said I had bones of a 55-year-old. And I healed that with visualization and affirmations. That's it. No calcium pills, nothing else. And so that's worked for me, to recognize that my power is in this present moment, and anything that is measured through whether it's a medical world or that I'm measuring is a past measurement, number one, and it doesn't define what I can do from this moment forward. And so if I stay in my power and know that I can, if there's something that can, if it can be broken, I can heal it. That's the way I look at it. And whether that's emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, I believe that we have the ability to do that. And I think that, if we would believe that we could grow an arm, we could grow an arm. We just don't believe it. If we believe that we can heal cancer, we can heal it. And there's so many thousands and hundreds of thousands of documented cases. And so I think it's interesting because sometimes it's easier for people to believe they can heal something physical than emotional because they're so attached to the story. And, I'm one that I get sick and tired of my story. I'm like, okay, I'm done with that story. The only time I actually ever talk about my past, this is quite true. The only time I talk about my past is to give people or use it as a teaching tool to help people to see where you can go. It's the only time I talk about my past or my pains. There's no point in it. It doesn't exist, just like Lisa said.
And even with physical things, it's identification with that diagnosis that is the worst possible thing to do. If
Absolutely.
you have a physical issue and you're having symptoms in that moment, you deal with the symptoms that you're having in that moment. You mitigate the symptoms and you say, okay, I have these symptoms that I need to try to get better. But to project that into a future that you're imagining that's worse than the symptoms that you're having in that moment is not the best way to handle it, I don't think.
Well, I would add to that, don't ever say I have.
Right.
I am. I have my assistant and my dear friend was 2.5 years ago was diagnosed with stage 4 metastasized to the bone cancer. She had 7 breaks in her body from the cancer eating away at her bones. And we had a very strict routine for her. And what was one of the things that she would say every time somebody came in is, okay, so you've got cancer and you've got it. Nope, stop, cancel. I have been diagnosed with I've been diagnosed with cancer. Doesn't mean I have it. I've been diagnosed with it. There's measurements that say that there's aspects of cancer that are living in my body. But when you take ownership of a disease, an illness, a way of being, now it's yours. So I would be very mindful. Our words are so powerful, and we repeat them 1,000 times a day. So be aware.
Absolutely. Checking the
Who else has a question, comment, thought?
some sweet comments, but I don't see any questions to jump off of. So what do y'all want to talk about?
Oh my goodness, are you shy? I'm a talker, guys, so I'll just fill up the space. Lisa and I will just be having a conversation, and we'll just totally get into it. So you got to jump in and help us out.
When it's a live group, everybody wants to talk the whole time, but everybody's a little more gun shy, I think, when it's on Zoom.
Mm-hmm. I am my own worst enemy. I work hard on loving me daily. I work hard on loving me daily. And you know what? I work hard on loving me daily. So even though I'm not my own worst enemy anymore, and even though I really kind of dig who I am, it's still something that I have to be conscious of, because it's easy for me to get focused on caring for others and not taking care of me. It's very easy for me. Like I can just go right back there and go, oh, yep, zip, and be right back. So I have to be conscious every single day. Okay, what am I doing to care for myself? And so know that that's kind of part of the process. And hey, I think if we have a body, we're gonna have something to work on. So it's good that you got something to work on.
And we're supposed to. We're supposed to have challenges. We're supposed to have feelings come up around those challenges.
Yes. Yes. And we learn from them, and then we share them, and then other people learn, and then you share them, and then they share them, and it's like the Pearl commercial, and they tell 2 friends, and they tell 2 friends, and so on, and so on, and so on. Do y'all remember that commercial, or am I the only one?
Oh yeah, I remember.
Okay, I'm just checking.
We're old broads. Let's see.
Happy to be in this wonderful energy.
Marty says for her, it's not so much about healing as thriving and resiliency. Absolutely.
I love that.
It's putting the right spin on it.
Linda, when you do intuitive readings, Sunny, are they always done in person? Most of the time they're not done in person. Right now, they're for sure not done in person. Yeah, most of the time they're not done in person. I do them almost always over the phone. And for me, the reality of it is I'm just reading energy, and energy is not something that I need a person in front of me. I can tap into energy wherever I am. I do a lot of online stuff. And so I do a lot of group readings and group things online. And in that, we've got a whole bunch of different energies, but it's easy for me. It's just part of, I think, just doing it so much. I've done it my whole life. That I'm able to just tap into that particular person and what it is they're needing. I did do Lisa's reading in person, but most of them are not.
It was one of the first Love Shack events before there was Love Shack.
That's right. I think that it was when I did my book tour, Lisa.
It was called Living Room something.
My living room book tour when my first book came out. So that was 2011.
Okay, and we had a bunch of people at the house.
We did. It was fun. It was beautiful. Tell us more about your intuitive readings. Well, if I'm working with a group of people, what I find is that there's always kind of a collective energy. There's always a message that will repeat. So what I notice for myself is if I need a message, then Spirit brings me people that I'm sharing the same message over and over again. I'm like, okay, Sunny, if I get 3 people that I say the same thing to, it's like, all right, make yourself a note. Like, you need to pay attention to this. But usually there is, in group readings, there really is I believe we're all kind of called to a space for a reason. There's a reason why we're all here together right now. And then some other people will join us, and watch this later, and they'll have their experience as well. But there's a reason why that collective energy right now we are lined up together. And that tends to be the way that it works for groups. Now, when I'm doing readings, like I work with police on missing persons cases and things like that. And when I do readings like that, it's really, those ones are hard. Like to do them for people like all of you. If we're doing an individual one or a group one, the energy stays more light, even if we're talking about hard subjects, because there's an anticipation and excitement. The vibration is kind of held, and I have to raise my vibration in order to even connect to do the work, right? That's one of the most important things for a psychic medium, is to raise their vibration so we can tap into these higher realms. When we're doing work that is like missing persons, murder cases, things like that, the vibration is so low that it's difficult to keep a high enough vibration to tap in and not take on the energy. And for an intuitive, for me personally as an empath, that's my greatest challenge in life. My greatest challenge is learning how to hold, maintain my own energy while doing the work that I do every day. And I think it's a lot of people's challenge. They just don't know that that's what their challenge is. This is feeling the energy of people and not letting it drop your vibration.
Mm-hmm. I could see that for sure. Linda's asking if you're picking up any energies from this group on Zoom.
Well, give me a minute. I haven't been focused there. So part of using your intuition is you have to be, you have to have very, very focused attention. And on a given day in my daily life, I'm still living my life. So I'm not, when I go to the store, which I haven't been to for 9 weeks, but when I would go to the store, I don't pull my energy open to be in a sense of reading each person. I actually have to be very, I have to kind of do this so that I can stay focused on what I need to, because if I expand my energy, then that's when I kind of see everything. So I've gotten very used to putting my attention on the things that I'm focused on, which is, talking to all of you guys. So I have to kind of redirect my energy to open it up to see kind of what I feel. So I'll do that, and I'll let Lisa talk, and I'll see what comes up.
So my favorite thing to talk about is the Eckhart work. This is something that was so dear to my heart years and years and years ago. And I think that what happened, I used to teach it and was really immersed in it. And I was also launching my Hay House book at the time. And my Hay House book did not make me a Hay House superstar. And I felt like a failure after that. My Hay House book did fine. It was a thing that the people in-house loved it. They loved the way I wrote it. But I didn't do the promotion and the, going out there and making it what they expect of their authors to do. I didn't do the touring and the all the self-promotion. So I think I shut it all down because I felt like I had failed at that, and I just continued writing. And this pandemic time has been so beautiful, and I've heard so many people talk about that it's just given us all a chance to go inward, to stop our busy lives and look at what's most real for us and what's most up and something that we can bring to the world. And I've always had this sophomoric idea that I want to make a difference. I want to, do something that will bring more love to the world. And I'm so grateful for this whole isolation, for the quarantine. It's thrown some wrenches definitely into our family, into my life. But I feel like that's what sort of reminded me, hey, I know how to deal with any problems that come up. Finances are finances. It's numbers on a piece of paper. It's numbers on a screen. That's all it is. The fact that the numbers were different months ago than they are right now, that's the past. That's gone. There's no point in even looking at what the past was. All I have is this present moment, and what can I do and what can I offer and give in this present moment. So I'm saying this because I'm hoping that you all are finding, we call them pandemic perks at my house. We're always looking for the pandemic perks, and I hope that you guys are finding some pandemic perks in the stillness too.
I like that, pandemic perks.
Yeah.
So tuning in to the audience, what came up for me is for all of you. Number one, I think that, and I don't know most of you, but the energy of service really comes through. So service work in some form, whether that's one person or that's a million people, it doesn't really matter. It's about being of service. Like there's a lot of service energy in this community right here. The message that I got though for you was for Archangel Jophiel. So Archangel Jophiel is the angel of beauty and of manifestation and of creativity. And the message that I hear is that right now in this time, for many people, it's been, you know, difficult and loss and change and all of those things. And the focus is how can you live in this situation in the way that you are right now and in the environment that you are, and find the beauty and find the grace and find the gifts. The other piece of it is thinking outside of the box, getting creative. In what areas do you need to bring creativity into your life? Maybe if you have a business that is affected by this, and maybe it's thinking again outside of the box, get creative. Maybe it is actually literally picking things up that help you to create, being a writer or starting to write or journaling through this process, or creating. Like I'm creative in my mind, but so I've got a lot of, like, I'm an idea person like crazy. My team calls me fire pants, and it drives them crazy because like boom, 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 boom. I got ideas all the time. But creative as far as like putting something together that makes something pretty creative, not Sunny. But I feel like that might be for some of you the way to express your creativity, but make sure that you're letting that energy flow, because when you allow that creativity to move through you, that's how things manifest. Manifestation is creativity. You're being a creator of something. And I think at this time, see, I've felt from the very beginning of this pandemic, and maybe because I kind of had a sense of not what exactly it was going to be, but a heads up on some of the changes that were going to happen. I felt like I was born for this. I was born to be here at this time. And I feel like it's a sacred gift to be here right now, because I do think that there are many people, you know, and I'm a go, 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 do. And I'm still like, I didn't get to clean my closets out like a lot of people did. Like I've been busy. And that's my nature. So that's fine with me. But I think that so many people have lived their lives in that go, 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 that they don't even know what they're going for. Right? We're just on autopilot. And so for a lot of people, that slowed them down to go, wait, I mean, I know in my neighborhood, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and it's been 105 already here. So it's hot. I have never in my life. So I'm a mover. I get out, I move my body every day for 30 minutes. I move my body in some form, walking, exercise, whatever. Sometimes it's an hour, but hiking, whatever. I've never seen the amount of people in my neighborhoods outside ever. I could add them up over my whole lifetime of living here for 20 years. And that just over these last 9 weeks, I've seen 10 times that amount. So it tells me people are recognizing what's important. I'm excited to see what that's going to look like. The reality of it is, from my perspective, guys, we have gotten so good at creating that we've overcreated. And our consumerism in the United States needs to change. And so there are too many businesses. Businesses are going to fall down. Businesses are going to crash. There's too many. We don't need a gas station on every single corner, like 4 of them. We could use one every couple, like, okay, it's a good thing. And then it's too good of a thing. So I think that part of this is coming back and going, we don't need all of the things. And maybe what we want is more of the connection. And I see that's what's happening. And so we've got to create what that looks like and create our lives instead of letting our lives create us. So Archangel Jophiel is the angel if you want to work with that creative energy, an angel, the energy of manifestation.
Thank you, girl. So that was for the group. That was
group. Yep.
You done the group. I love it. Sherry's saying, I've heard intuitive say this will be the best year ever. It's our choice as to what we manifest. Do you agree?
I do agree.
You agree.
I do. Absolutely, I do agree.
Victoria and David are saying, how do they get in touch with their guardian angel?
Ooh. So, what is today? I'm like, okay, wait a minute. What is today? Thursday. Yesterday, I actually did a guided meditation on my fan page on Facebook on actually how to discover your guardian, a whole meditation on how to discover your guardian angel's name. So that might be of value to you, David and Victoria. But the simplest way is if you want to connect with your angels, your deceased loved ones, your spirit guides, what you've got to do is raise your vibration. That's the key. You got to stay present so that you can actually receive the messages. Because if you're thinking about the future or you're thinking about the past, which don't exist, then you can't be present to the messages that are coming in right now, right? So you have to be present. But in order to connect with those higher realms, your higher self, and channel the messages of the angels, your guides, your loved ones, is you've got to raise your vibration. The way we raise our vibration is different for everyone. Some people meditate, some people exercise, some people chant, some people, go for a walk, some people run. I don't know who those people are. I think it's crazy, but that raises some people's vibrations. So whatever it is that brings you joy raises your vibration. If it doesn't bring you joy, it doesn't raise your vibration, even if you think it should. So there's some people who are like, oh God, I got to meditate so I can raise my vibration. That doesn't work. If you don't like it, it's not raising your vibration. Sometimes you need to push through it, and you might like meditation, but you guys get my point.
Absolutely. Amy, do you want to tell us you want to talk to us about your story? Or do you want me to just read this?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Let me turn back on my. So I've had, and I just thought it was an interesting thing to say, and I understand about not wanting to live in the past, but I feel it was productive for me to understand it. And then when someone said, so do you want to move on from it? And so it could be in any scenario. Sometimes I've said no, like with control. It's like, are you ready to let the control go? I'm like, no, I am not. So now it's like, why am I not? Now I'm working on the why I'm not ready to let that go. And so that's what I'm working on. But with this scenario, it was with my sister. Gosh, that's when you're a little child, right? All the way up to now I'm 49. And it was an integral part of my life. I felt it every day. I cried about it. I talked about it. I obsessed about it. And I gotta be honest, I can't really remember what it was. It's like, it's so funny, these different shifts I've done, I worked on it and I talked about it a lot. But I got to a point, whatever point that was, I think things happened, right? I was ready to release more and release more and release more at different times. I think I had a scenario with a person that helped me even release more. I was grateful for that. I accepted it in the moment. And then, I was asked, do you want to continue to hold this? I'm like, no, not really. I'm so done with the story. But I feel like I had to tell the story to get tired of the story to move on with the story. And I still find it so incredibly fascinating that I could spend so much time in this story. And now every once in a while I think about it and I think, what was that? And then I think to myself, I really don't care. And then I just sort of shut it down and move on. But how you can not even care after you cared for over 40 years, I think it's fairly amazing. But I feel like I had to live in it a little bit in order to be able to release it.
There are a lot of personal development techniques that do that, where you write it and you tell it in a funny accent, and you do different ways to tell it just to kind of get the energy out of it. So,
and I probably just tried a whole bunch of different modalities until I found one that actually worked.
Exactly.
Or maybe all of them sort of helped me at some point.
Yes.
Release it.
Well, because here's the thing, guys, everything works for someone at some time, or it wouldn't be something.
Right.
So, if it's in a book, if it's a teacher teaching it, everything does work for somebody. Is it working for you in this moment with what it is you need? And so you just came across the right thing at the right time that finally helped you to release it. Now, if when you were 13, you were taught, hey, the past is the past, the future is the future, those don't really exist and you don't really need to go there, that might have changed it right then if you hadn't had all these years and all this process. So absolutely, I think everything, it's kind of like diets. Every diet has worked for somebody, but that doesn't mean it works for you, right? So I think that when you find the right thing, it's just like this click. And it isn't because it's the right thing, it's because you're right, you're ready.
Yeah, because I would say that the other thing that probably was prevalent is that I was ready to be done.
Yeah.
And I had to go through it, and I kept thinking I was done, and then I wasn't done.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be done so bad that I kept trying until I figured it out. And I think that's to your point. I just kept focusing on what I wanted, and then I got it.
Yes.
Because I kept working on it.
Yes. Yep. Good job, girl.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Anybody else have any thoughts? Anything you want to share? Not seeing any questions over here.
Nope. I think people are like, nope, I'm good. I got it all. That means we taught really well, Lisa, and they got it. It's crystal clear.
Tell us about the retreat with Anita Morjani and Emmanuel Dagger. I would still be joining you for that, but it's Katie's graduation. Even though it's virtual, we're going to do a little thing at the house. And
that's awesome. Good for you. Well, so we actually we had an event in Sedona scheduled for the end of this month. Anita Morgiani, Emmanuel Dagger, and I, and it's been scheduled for over a year. And like everybody else's, everything else, we had to reschedule it. So it's actually rescheduled for January now, the end of January in Sedona. But what we decided to do is, since we already had the time blocked off of our calendar, we would do a virtual full day event. So we're doing a full day event called Rebirth and Renewal. And it's the three of us on Zoom. And we will be helping people to just start from the place that they are today, not where they've been, but what they want to create from this space forward, based on looking at, each one of us has had a lot of powerful experiences in recreating our lives. And so we're going to help people recreate the things in their lives that they want to change, that they want to do different. So it's May 30th. It's just a one day, and it's a pay what you can. So instead of it being, $150 or whatever, we just decided to do it as a, pay what you can. And that way it felt good to us, and we thought it would feel good to everybody else. So, so we're still doing the event in January, but we kind of created this space to do this event together instead, or in addition to.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So if people are interested, you can go to my website, sunnydawnjohnston.com, and then it's /rebirth. And it'll be a great full day online retreat right here on Zoom.
And you have all kinds of other things that people can join you for. I see all the time your Facebook lives. And
yeah, I'm on Facebook. I do a off the cuff podcast every weekday at 1:11 p.m. Pacific time, where I do interviews, which I'm going to be asking you down the road. So I do interviews with people, one or two of those a week, and then I pick different topics that the audience is looking forward to, something usually connected to the mind, the body, the spirit, or the emotions, and talk about that. And just really, the intention is just to help people keep their vibration up in a time when that's not the easiest thing for a lot of people to do. So yeah, that's right on Facebook on my fan page, Off the Cuff. And then the actual podcasts, when we turn them into podcasts, are available on iTunes or on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, the final recordings. And you guys have another Love Shack coming up. What's the next date? Because it was, wasn't that Rob's?
It'll be
Is it-
with Rob and myself. We're going to do one on June 3rd.
June
And
3rd.
Rob and I have been long time collaborators, particularly on the Eckhart Tolle material. So we dovetail very much with that. And Rob is an amazing coach. He's got a Ivy League education in positive psychology. He's done 1,000 things. He's a Hollywood guy. He's hosted shows and he's been on all these talk shows. And he talks about post-traumatic growth, which is the flip side to PTSD. So it's really like finding ways that even though we're all traumatized to some extent right now, it's finding ways to strike that balance and hit the post-traumatic growth side of things as opposed to not. So that's June 3rd. It's free. We'd love for you all to be there with us. And if this had been a live Love Shack like we normally do, I always give party favors.
Aww.
I'm going to give this book. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, that's a book we wrote together. I love it.
Both worked on this book. So if whenever we are doing live events again, you will all get a copy of this book that Sunny and I wrote together. It was going to be our party favor. Had this.
Oh, that would have been fun. But you know what? You guys will have it some other time. And I'm hoping I'll be there in November and we can do another one.
We will do it for sure if you are here in November. Absolutely.
Yes, that's the goal. November is the goal. We'll see.
Well, if no one else has any more questions.
Just got lots of thank yous, it looks like.
Yeah. I would like to learn more techniques to raise my vibration. Today is the first time I felt like I really felt a vibration. I do see colors when I close my eyes. Who was that? It's scrolling too fast.
Cindy.
So
techniques to raise your vibration. Really, I'm talking about that every day on the 111 podcast, Cindy. So it's free on Facebook. So that might be something for you to check out if you have the time, 111 Pacific time. But the way you raise your vibration, the simplest answer is do things that bring you joy. That's the simplest answer. Do things that bring you joy. That raises your vibration the fastest.
absolutely true.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this was so much fun. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Lisa, for inviting me.
Love you, girlfriend.
I love you too, darling. I love you. It was great to see everybody. Thank you guys so much. Mwah.
Mwah. Big hugs and kisses from the Love Shack. Till next time. Bye.